Just wanted to put in one last one here for the Flat Earth Truth. We'll call it the evidence of Flat Earth Truth. Okay, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. Remember, truth in the movies, lies in the news.
Right, I've had a couple of people ask me how can I prove that the moon is doing this anal emma in the sky. Well, here's my old astrolabe app. This is my old iPad. I've had it a few years now. It's the reason I keep my iPad. But anyway, what we've got here, just to show you, this is the level horizon here. So the sun rises in the east, goes across this ecliptical archway in the sky and sets in the west. This is your Masonic arch, okay? And it could also be, the sun could be going in a straight line, but just because we're spinning underneath it, its perspective and things, it creates this archway. Anyway, that's another story. But currently, the moon's about to disappear off this way into the west. What you have here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I see these planets as 8 corners of the hypercube. Why a hypercube? Well, it's the fourth dimension creating this three-dimensional realm, and this is what you're seeing being played out in the sky. I'll go into more detail in other videos. This one is really about this moon anal emma. Right, let me see if I can, sorry, I'll get onto the pictures here. Go that way. So I wanted to show you. Right, so the date here is the 10th of March, and you can see here that's a good guide there, okay? Now these is called the dome, or the firmament people are calling it, but it's really not a physical thing. It's more of magnetism, and anyway, we'll just think of it as a clear egg-shaped dome for the purposes of this video anyway. So here we can see the moon on the 10th of March was a lot lower down. Here, you see how it's dropped down. And then on the 31st, it's going up again. And then on the 14th of March, all this month here, it's come down again. And on the 1st of March, it was right up here. So this moon is constantly going up and down, up and down. And this is why you get this, if you was to photograph it and put all those photographs together, you get that sine wave in the sky. And different times of year, obviously different star constellations come into place, arrangement in the sky, and the moon moves with them as well every night. Obviously this energy field is constantly on the move, but I'm going to leave, I don't want to confuse anyone too much. So again here, what's the date of this one? 22nd of March 18, right up in the sky. So you've gone from here right up there. And again, these are constantly on the move. I've never seen any rings of Saturn. As far as I'm concerned, Saturn and the cube and stuff, it all relates to Earth. And the ring relates to this ecliptical arch, or this thing here where all the planets seem to... They're only viewed along this line here in the sky. I'll show you some videos where my autofocus have really helped me see how things worked. Basically, the telescope was an absolute pile of garbage. I thankfully got rid of it, so managed to sell it in the end. But anyway, so I hope this is coming across. But this is a brilliant app. I haven't been able to find anywhere else. They seem to have this was about, and it must be 6-year-old, this iPad. And the guys that made this they've stopped making it. Whether they were told to stop making it, I don't know. But again, different times of the year, it gets even higher up in at Christmas. I did a little video. See if I can find. Yeah, look how high up it was then. You almost have to strain your neck to see it. And that one was 2nd of Jan there. And it was right in the sky. That's why I put these videos up. I was trying to get people to see this, but it took me quite a few years to work it all out, and now I'm just sharing it with you all, so you don't have to put all the effort in. You can just, yeah, it's there for you. I'm sharing it with you, and now you can share it with other people. But it literally is that simple. the moon is constantly going up and down in the sky, and if you was to take these still photographs and overlay them, you get this sine wave. And obviously the sun also does this, but it does it over a year. You get that the anal lemma in the sky. I'll try and do a video on Tauruses and bits and bobs, and try and show you some stuff I've saved on my pins account, and hopefully that should start to tie together. But this grid thing here, it's not a physical, it's not a dome made out of metal or clear alloys or anything. It's think in terms of electricity and magnetism. That's more what it's made. That's what it is really. And the archway is a meeting point of the energy fields. One ring to rule all in the sky. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I don't want to put too much into my videos, but then when I don't put enough in, people moan. So it's a hard for me to gauge really. But this doesn't exist. This stupid little thing that they show you in these telescopes, I've never seen it, and I've filmed it with my camera. They're all these things. They're exactly the same. They're just corners of the hypercube, as I said, and that's why there's 8 of them. Pause it, count them, and do what you need to do. But anyway, I'll leave this one here for tonight. Just as I say, it's just for the people that will just go and prove it. Well, I don't need to prove it. You can go out and prove it yourself. As I say, excuse me, fixed point. Watch the moon every night, and it will slips back about an hour or so. So if you went out there, it won't be there at the same time. You've just got to wait another hour, and there it'll come into view. But no, that'll do. That's pretty much all I need to say with this video, and I hope you like the dragon video. It's supposed to be awesome. It's supposed to be amazing, because it is. It's the Earth, and it's everywhere. They put it right in your face and called it the dragon, the serpent. But it's just our reflection in the sky. All religions are all based on this moon worship, if you haven't worked this out. And we'll go into Venus probably on another video, and how that ties into every single religion on Earth as well. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing sinister of what I'm saying. It's just I've based this on well, quite a few years worth of research. So anyway, and it all does tie in with how the jet engines work, just in case people are wondering why I'm doing these videos. Because if you don't understand where you live and how the energy is being delivered, and what's squeezing and pumping that heart of yours, it's not going to make sense when I try and show you at the end. Anyway, I'll leave it there. It's nearly 8 minutes on this one. That'll do. All right, thanks a lot.
Truth is often stranger than fiction, Curveball. It is true that history is written by the winners, but it doesn't make it true. Wake up before you burn up. Question what they tell you. You might learn something. Enjoy this last portion of the evidence of the flat earth truth.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video here at my channel, Jesus Truth. Thank you very much for stopping by. So, I have another amazing documentary for you guys. This one called Jesuits Erasing the Flat Earth. This video reinforces and verifies the information from the last video I did called Flat Earth, Jesuits and the Global Conspiracy. And once again, it exposes the greatest lie of all time, which is that we live on a globe Earth that is spinning through space, which is just ridiculous. This video was produced by the YouTube channel called Migmag. I will leave a link down below. And to Migmag, I would like to say thank you and much respect, brother, much respect for producing some great videos. So without further ado, sit back and enjoy the truth, and I will see you next time. God bless.
Johnny Cerrucci with another Mig-Mag special report. For 1,000 years, from roughly 500 AD to 1500 AD, the civilized world was controlled by Rome, but not military Rome, religious Rome. The Roman Empire had mutated from a military power into a religious one, co-opting the beliefs of Christianity and mixing them with ancient Egyptian, Greco, and Babylonian paganism. Christian doctrine that came directly from Jesus Christ and was transcribed in the Bible stated that each individual had the liberty and independence to govern their own salvation by cultivating a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. The new religious Roman Empire insinuated herself in between Christ and the believer and said if you wanted to have your soul saved, you had to rely on the priests, bishops, and cardinals of Rome. This was the worst kind of slavery because it was a slavery of disinformation. Now and again, sincere Bible-believing Christians like the Waldensians of the Alps, the Albigensians, Jerome of Prague, John Wycliffe and his Lollards, Jan Hus of Bohemia, would rebel against this Roman rule and show Christians that Vatican doctrines claiming that you needed Rome to ensure your salvation were contradicted by the Bible. As a result, the papacy strictly forbade Bibles to be placed into the hands of the common person and only allowed Jerome's Latin Vulgate to be handled by clergy. Men like John Wycliffe painstakingly translated the Vulgate into the language of the people. For Wycliffe, it was English. English Bibles were then slowly and carefully copied and handled by Wycliffe's followers, who handed them out to and taught the people. In response, Roman authorities captured Wycliffe's followers, called Lollards, tied their Bibles around their necks, and burned them alive. It's what so-called Christian Rome did to all of her enemies, including Jerome of Prague and Jan Hus. John Fox's Book of Martyrs, originally titled Acts and Monuments, is completely filled with examples of Catholic authorities torturing and murdering Christians. And when a Lollard was burned with a Bible hanging around his neck, it was a terrible loss, because not only were Christians being burned alive, but hand-copied Bibles were irreplaceable. But in 1517, a new rebel stepped up, an Augustinian monk from Germany named Martin Luther. Luther was furious that Pope Leo X, Giovanni de' Medici, from the powerful Medici family who helped to rule the world then and including through to today, had sent their attack dogs, the Dominicans, to cheat the common people out of their money by claiming they could buy what is called an indulgence, which is basically a receipt of forgiven sin. By paying money to indulgence peddlers like Johann Tetzel, poor Christians believed that they had some of their sins forgiven. Worse, they were told that dead loved ones were in purgatory, and they could give money to these indulgence peddlers, and the Pope would then release their dead loved ones. Luther wrote 95 short paragraphs or theses, and on November 1st of 1517, All Saints' Day, posted them to the doors of All Saints Cathedral in Wittenberg. But what was different about Martin Luther's protest and the protests of previous Christians was the movable type printing press of Johannes Gutenberg. The 95 theses were translated and replicated by the Gutenberg press and spread like wildfire. Martin Luther instantly shot to #1 on the Vatican hit list. Now remember, he was an Augustinian monk. But that didn't matter. He was waking people up and freeing them from the Roman chains, and for that he needed to be stopped. He was kidnapped by his benefactor, Frederick the Wise of Saxony, and held at Wartburg Castle for several months to protect him from Vatican assassins. During that time, he translated the Bible into vernacular German, and it may have been the most important thing he ever did, starting with the New Testament and then later the Old Testament. But now the Gutenberg press started printing off large quantities of common language Bibles, and the fires of the Inquisition couldn't keep up. Other brave Christians like William Tyndale, also a Roman Catholic priest, began translating Bibles into the language of their people. Tyndale was English like Wycliffe, and he too was eventually executed by Rome for his crime. But now Rome had a problem. There were too many Bibles and Bible translators to be kept in check by burning them all. A new tactic was born, a tactic that English Cardinal Thomas Wolsey called learning against learning. And that tactic was to discredit the Bible in order to force people to return to accepting Rome as the ultimate authority over their body and soul. In this tactic of learning against learning, Rome would literally rewrite reality and weave a false reality matrix that we now all swim in to this day. For thousands of years, mankind understood the earth to be flat and stationary. Only rarely did men like Pythagoras attempt to claim otherwise. And it's interesting to note that many Freemasons consider Pythagoras to be one of the first of their craft. But now rewriting our reality as a tactic to discredit the Bible became a top priority in the face of Martin Luther's 1517 Reformation, Protestant Reformation. The Catholic response would be the Counter-Reformation, and it would be spearheaded by a Spanish Templar knight named Ignatius of Loyola and his followers, whom we call today the Jesuits. Their first opportunity came from the Vatican's mathematician, a Polish priest named Nicholas Copernicus. Copernicus gave birth to the modern heliocentric model of the universe with his work De Revolutionibus Orbium Celestium, on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres. Copernicus knew he was weaving a matrix of lies and wanted to hold publication of De Revolutionibus until after his death. But powerful Roman Catholic clergy like Tiedemann Gies, Bishop of Culm, and the papal secretary himself, Johann Wiedmanstadt, forced him to publish in 1543. The facts that Catholic clergy forced Copernicus to publish, or that Copernicus was the Vatican mathematician, or that he received his doctorate in canon law from Bologna University. Canon law are the precepts by which Rome governed nations. Adam Weishaupt was a doctor in canon law. Or that he was a Roman Catholic priest. These have all been swept under the carpet. But Copernicus never married, and even the Catholic Encyclopedia had to note that in 1537 King Sigismund of Poland put Copernicus's name on the list of 4 candidates for the vacant episcopal seat of Ermland, which makes it probable that at least in later life he had entered the priesthood. Also swept under the carpet has been the timing of the publication of De Revolutionibus, right on the heels of Martin Luther's Protestant Reformation. And if that's not clear enough for you, how about this? A Vatican agent named Georg Joachim Redicus, who was originally born Georg de Porus, had insinuated himself into the Luther Reformation and was in Wittenberg when he left to become a close student of Copernicus. Sources like Wikipedia claim that Redicus was sent from reformer Philip Melanchthon, a dear friend of Martin Luther, but it is absolutely Roman Catholic disinformation. In the Table Talk of Martin Luther, the great reformer is quoted as having said, "There is talk of a new astrologer who wants to prove that the earth moves and goes round instead of the sky, the sun, the moon, just as if somebody were moving in a carriage or a ship might hold that he was sitting still and at rest while the earth and the trees walked and moved. But that is how things are nowadays. When a man wishes to be clever, he must needs invent something special, and the way he does it, he must needs be the best. The fool wants to turn the whole art of astronomy upside down. However, as Holy Scripture tells us, so did Joshua bid the sun to stand still, and not the earth." In his lectures on the book of Genesis, Luther said, "We Christians must be different from the philosophers in the way we think about the causes of these things. And if some are beyond our comprehension, like those before us concerning the waters above the heavens, we must believe them and admit our lack of knowledge rather than either wickedly deny them or presumptuously interpret them in conformity with our own understanding." The great reformer Jean Calvin, also known as John Calvin, called Copernicus a dreamer who has a spirit of bitterness and contradiction, reprove everything and prevent the order of nature. We will see some who are so deranged, Calvin said, not only in religion, but who in all things reveal their monstrous nature, that they will say that the sun does not move, and that it is the earth which shifts and turns. When we see such minds, we must indeed confess that the devil possesses them, and that God sets them before us as mirrors in order to keep us in his fear. So it is with all who argue out of pure malice, and that happily make a show of their imprudence. When they are told this is hot, they will reply, no, it is plainly cold. When they are shown an object is black, they will say, no, it is white, and vice versa. Just like the man who said that the snow is black, for although it is perceived and known all to be white, yet he clearly wished to contradict the fact. And so it is that they are madmen who try to change the natural order, and even to dazzle eyes and benumb the senses. Do you think Calvin knew how the Freemasons were used by the Jesuits? When they are shown an object as black, they will say it is white.
We're talking about our government here.
No, we're talking about a crime, Bill, pure and simple. Y'all gotta start thinking on a different level, like the CIA does. Now, we're through the looking glass here, people. White is black, and black is white.
Very quickly, Rome jumped upon this new model of the universe, and Jesuits like Christopher Clavius used Copernicus and his work to fabricate the Gregorian calendar, the calendar we all use. Rightly did the prophet Daniel say in chapter 7, verse 23, that during his vision, a being standing near him said, "The fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on the earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it into pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall rise from this kingdom, and another shall rise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and intend to change times and laws. And the saints shall be given into his hand for a time." Very quickly did Rome and papal agents like the Jesuits begin to push this new cosmology. She took over astronomy and either pushed out or killed off anyone who contradicted the idea that the Earth was a globe spinning in space and revolving around the sun. Even those that met her halfway didn't keep her happy, and she dealt with them as well. Teague Ottenson Brahe, whose nickname was Tycho, accepted the idea that the Earth was a globe spinning in space, but still believed that his own observations and data proved that the Earth was the center of the solar system and not the sun. This is known as geocentrism. Tycho wanted to follow in the steps of Martin Luther and studied at the University of Wittenberg, but was forced out by the plague. Brahe's life appeared to be frequently in danger, and in 1566 he lost a large portion of his nose in a duel. He was 20 years old at the time. He later died under mysterious circumstances at the very young age of 54. One of those who claimed it was simply an illness, a bladder infection contracted during a banquet in Prague, was his understudy Johannes Kepler. Kepler was a German astronomer and supposedly a Lutheran, yet he had an intimate relationship with Jesuits. In 1597, Archduke Franz Ferdinand II of Austria banished all Protestants, good Roman Catholic that he was, and Kepler fled to Hungary. But the Jesuits intervened and convinced Ferdinand to allow him to return. Kepler grew up with a Jesuit uncle under the same roof of their house in Wilderstadt. Uncle Sidaldus was a Jesuit astrologer who also kept a wife. Upon the unexpected death of Tycho Brahe, Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II immediately promoted Kepler to replace him as imperial mathematician, and Kepler very quickly went to work, rewriting all of Brahe's observations to be interpreted as heliocentric and not geocentric. In a paper titled Kepler's Relation to the Jesuits, Dr. Jörg Schuppner at the University of Leipzig noted that it is well known that the order of the Jesuits was the most important and the most active Catholic order in the field of science during the 17th and 18th centuries. One field of particularly intensive successful study carried out by the Jesuits was astronomy. Many of their names are associated with the important discoveries in the history of astronomy, such as the discovery and mapping of moon craters. It is nearly impossible to list all the names of those who made serious contributions as astronomers or mathematicians. One aspect of the considerable role the Jesuits played in the history of astronomy was their support of Johannes Kepler. Some of them stood in extensive correspondence with Kepler. Now, it was obvious to protesters like Luther and Calvin that something fishy was going on in Rome, and the papacy needed plausible deniability while she rewrote our reality. That propaganda was presented by Italian astronomer and mathematician Galileo Galilei, and it's absolutely fascinating what user-edited Wikipedia says. In the entry for Galileo Galilei, under the subtitle Galileo, Kepler, and Theories of Tides, Cardinal Bellarmine had written in 1615 that the Copernican system could not be defended without, quote, a true physical demonstration that the sun does not circle the earth, but the earth circles the sun. Galileo considered his theory of the tides to provide that required proof of the motion of the earth. Now, there's no link on the name Cardinal Bellarmine, which is unusual for Wikipedia. Maybe that's because Cardinal Bellarmine was Robert Bellarmine of the Society of Jesus, one of the most powerful Jesuits of his time, who was canonized as saint in 1930 and named a doctor of the church. What's more, it is ludicrous to imagine that the Earth's supposed large mass doesn't pull the moon and crash into it, and instead the magical force of gravity holds it stationary. Even more ridiculous is the idea that the moon affects tides by pulling on the water. Again, the magical, mystical force of gravity is blamed. South African author Thomas Winship wrote in 1899 his book Zetetic Cosmogony. If the moon lifted up the water, it is evident that near the land the water would be drawn away and low instead of high tide caused. Again, the velocity and path of the moon are uniform, and it follows that if she exerted any influence on the earth, that influence could only be a uniform influence. But the tides are not uniform. And Winship uses examples from South Africa. At Port Natal, the rise and fall is about 6 feet, while at Beira, about 600 miles up the coast, the rise and fall is 26 feet. This effectually settles the matter that the moon has no influence on the tides. But Protestant reformers were on to Rome. She knew she needed a smokescreen, and she provided it. Suddenly, history was rewritten, and rather than pushing with her own agents, like Copernicus, Kepler, Galileo, and others, to rewrite our cosmology, suddenly, the papacy was a defender of the flat earth. Well, just look what they did to poor Galileo. Let's do. Supposedly, Galileo was tried for heresy at the hands of that evil flat earther, Jesuit Robert Bellarmine. He bravely stood by his guns and humiliated the church with a heliocentric spinning ball earth. What happened to Galileo Galilei? Well, for the last few years of his life, he was put under house arrest. Have you read anything about the Inquisition? Do you know what the Inquisition did to people when it truly considered them an enemy? Things like rotating their arms backwards until they were pulled out of their sockets, inventing special instruments that could be jammed into a person's body to rip open their bowels, putting them in a special sarcophagus filled with spikes that would jam into them to the bone. Did you ever hear of Edgar Allan Poe? Are you familiar with his short story, The Pit and the Pendulum? About a swinging, razor-sharp pendulum that lowered across a victim and would take hours to slowly saw that victim in half. Did you know it was based upon the Inquisition? A little-known secret is that the Jesuits now own astronomy. When their missionaries went across the world, across our flat earth, the first thing they did was insinuate themselves in royal courts to become the official astronomer of that kingdom. China is a great example. One of the first Jesuits in China was Matteo Ricci, Ricci and his successors like Adam Schall and Ferdinand Verbiest were all the royal court astronomers, and eventually fabricated the calendar for the Chinese emperor. Today, the Jesuits even have their own observatories, both in Italy and in America. They use their puppets in American government to steal Apache holy ground on Mount Graham in Arizona. Are they reaching out extraterrestrially or interdimensionally? They appear to have answered our question with the latest piece of technology on Mount Graham, the Large Binocular Telescope Near-Infrared Utility with Camera and Integral Field Unit for Extragalactic Research, also known as Lucifer. And it's not surprising given the success the Jesuits have had in rewriting our reality. Now, we're supposed to believe that Rome was against the spinning ball Earth heliocentric cosmic accident cosmology of our modern understanding. Yet at every step of the way, Jesuits or Jesuit agents were there to bolster our false reality, hiding whenever possible behind convenient Jews. And for more on that, see our special report, It's the Jews, from Johnny Cerrucci and Mi'kmaq. Needing to contrive an origin for our accidental existence that contradicts the Bible, Jesuit-trained Belgian priest Georges Lemaître is the father of the so-called Big Bang Theory, the idea that first there was nothing and then it exploded. He was a close co-worker of just such a Jewish puppet, Albert Einstein. Einstein bolstered the Jesuit cosmology with his convoluted theory of relativity. The problem was that observations of both scientists and laymen weren't matching what so-called astronomers were telling us. And so Einstein fabricated the theory of relativity to claim that your reality was relative to the time-space continuum. It is purposefully almost impossible to understand. You're just supposed to trust science and astronomy. The Jesuits then jumped on with dinosaurs and Charles Darwin to claim the Earth is billions of years old. And wherever Darwin's theory of evolution had holes, Jesuits stepped up to fill the gap. Jesuits like Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, the father of the New Age, after fabricating the ape-like pre-humans that we supposedly came from, even students of evolution became concerned that there was a, quote, missing link between primitive apes and modern humans. A discovery was made in 1912 to bridge that gap. Having been found in Piltdown, East Sussex, England, it was named Piltdown Man. Unfortunately, it was also found to be a hoax. The skull of a small human with the altered mandible and teeth of an orangutan. Sometime later, paleontologist Stephen Jay Gould uncovered the father of that hoax, a Jesuit priest named Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. There are many such examples in archaeology and paleontology, and yet no one asks, why would so-called scientists be fabricating evidence? The goal was to discredit the Bible, and it has been resoundingly successful. Without the spinning ball Earth, Darwinian dinosaur cosmic accident, the Bible is a science textbook. With it, critics laugh and question the Bible, and instead look to human authorities to save their souls, such as the Vicar of Christ himself, who is for the first time in Roman Catholic history a Jesuit priest. This has been Johnny Cerrucci for a Mi'kmaq Special Report.
In this last section, Curveball, I want you to keep this scripture in mind, having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. It came to me while I was watching some of this philosophical information I wanted to leave you with as evidence of the flat earth truth. God bless you. I wanted to use this part here, the Wizard of Oz breakdown, where they get into these false religions and how long ago this was going on, how we've been fighting this information for a long time, these false religions, these doctrines of demons. Truth in the movies.
It is through an understanding of the author's philosophical background and beliefs, however, that the story's true meaning can be grasped. L. Frank Baum, the author of The Wizard of Oz, was a member of the Theosophical Society, which is an organization based on occult research and the comparative study of religions. Baum had a deep understanding of theosophy and, consciously or not, created an allegory of theosophic teachings when he wrote The Wizard of Oz. The Theosophical Society is an occult organization, mainly based on the teachings of Helena P. Blavatsky, which seeks to extract the common roots of all religions in order to form a universal doctrine. But it is perhaps desirable to state unequivocally that the teachings, however fragmentary and incomplete, contained in these volumes, belong neither to the Hindu, the Zoroastrian, the Chaldean, nor the Egyptian religion. Neither to Buddhism, Islam, Judaism nor Christianity exclusively. The secret doctrine is the essence of all these. Sprung from it in their origins, the various religious schemes are now made to merge back into their original element, out of which every mystery and dogma has grown, developed, and become materialized. H. P. Blavatsky, The Secret Doctrine. The three declared objects of the original Theosophical Society as established by Blavatsky, Judge and Olcott, its founders, were as follows: first, to form a nucleus of the universal brotherhood of humanity, without distinction of race, creed, sex, caste, or color. Second, to encourage the study of comparative religion, philosophy, and science. Third, to investigate the unexplained laws of nature and the powers latent in man. The Theosophist, Volume 75, Number 6. The main tenets of Theosophy are thoroughly described in Blavatsky's work Isis Unveiled and The Secret Doctrine. At the core of theosophical teachings are the same tenets found in many other occult schools, the belief of the presence of a divine spark within every person which, with the proper discipline and training, can lead to spiritual illumination and a state of virtual godliness. Another important principle found in Theosophy is reincarnation. It is believed that the human soul, like all other things in the universe, go through 7 stages of development. Theosophical writings propose that human civilizations, like all other parts of the universe, develop cyclically through 7 stages. Blavatsky posited that the whole humanity, and indeed every reincarnating human monad, evolves through a series of 7 root races. Thus in the first age, humans were pure spirit, in the second age, They were sexless beings inhabiting the now lost continent of Hyperborea. In the Third Age, the giant Lemurians were informed by spiritual impulses endowing them with human consciousness and sexual reproduction. Modern humans finally developed on the continent of Atlantis. Since Atlantis was the nadir of the cycle, the present Fifth Age is a time of reawakening humanity's psychic gifts. The term psychic here really means the realization of the permeability of consciousness as it had not been known earlier in evolution, although sensed by some more sensitive individuals of our species. The ultimate goal is of course to return to the state of divinity from which we've emerged. The same tenets, with subtle variations, can be found in other schools such as Rosicrucianism, Freemasonry and other orders teaching the mysteries. Before writing The Wizard of Oz, or even contemplating becoming a children's story author, Baum held many jobs, one of which was editor of the Aberdeen Saturday Pioneer. In 1890, Baum wrote a series of articles introducing his readers to Theosophy, including his views on Buddha, Muhammad, Confucius, and Christ. At that time, he wasn't a member of the Theosophical Society, but he already showed a deep understanding of its philosophy. Here's an excerpt of his editor's musings, amongst various sects so numerous in America today who find their fundamental basis in occultism. The Theosophist stands preeminent both in intelligence and point of numbers. Theosophy is not a religion. Its followers are simply searchers after truth. The Theosophists, in fact, are the dissatisfied with the world, dissenters from all creeds. They owe their origin to the wise men of India, and are numerous, not only in the far-famed Mystic East, but in England, France, Germany, and Russia. They admit the existence of a God, not necessarily of a personal God. To them God is nature and nature is God, but despite this, if Christianity is truth, as our education has taught us to believe, there can be no menace to it in Theosophy. L. Frank Baum, Aberdeen Saturday Pioneer, January 25, 1890. In another of his editor's musings, Baum discusses the use of mystic symbolism in fiction, something he accomplished 10 years later with The Wizard of Oz. There is a strong tendency in modern novelists towards introducing some vein of mysticism or occultism into their writings. Books of this character are eagerly bought and read by the people, both in Europe and America. It shows the innate longing in our natures to unravel the mysterious, to seek some explanation, however fictitious, of the unexplainable in nature and in our daily existence. For, as we advance in education, our desire for knowledge increases, and we are less satisfied to remain in ignorance of that mysterious fountainhead from which emanates all that is sublime and grand and incomprehensible in nature. At the end of this article, Baum goes into an all-out plead for more occultism in literature. The appetite of our age for occultism demands to be satisfied, and while with the mediocrity of people will result in mere sensationalism, It will lead in many to higher and nobler and bolder thought, and who can tell what mysteries these braver and abler intellects may unravel in future ages. L. Frank Baum, Aberdeen Saturday Pioneer, February 22, 1890. 2 years after writing those articles, L. Frank Baum and his wife Maud Gage joined the Theosophical Society in Chicago. The archives of the Theosophical Society in Pasadena, California recorded the start of their membership as September 4, 1892. In 1890, The Wizard of Oz was published. When asked about how Baum got his inspiration for the story, he replied, "It was pure inspiration, it came to me right out of the blue." I think that sometimes the great author has a message to get across and he has to use the instrument at hand. I happen to be that medium, and I believe the magic key was given me to open the doors to sympathy and understanding, joy, peace and happiness. L. Frank Baum, cited by Hearn 73. The Wizard of Oz is much appreciated within the Theosophical Society. In 1986, the American Theosophist magazine recognized Baum as a notable theosophist who thoroughly represented the organization's philosophy. Although readers have not looked at his fairy tales for their theosophical content, it is significant that Baum became a famous writer of children's books after he came into contact with theosophy. Theosophical ideas permeate his work and provided inspiration for it. Indeed, The Wizard can be regarded as theosophical allegory, pervaded by theosophical ideas from beginning to end. The story came to Baum as an inspiration, and he accepted it with a certain awe as a gift from outside, or perhaps from deep within, himself. American Theosophist No. 74, 1986. So what is the esoteric meaning of this children's story, which came to Baum as a divine inspiration? If you've never read or watched The Wizard of Oz or need your memory refreshed, here's a quick sum up of the movie. The film follows 12-year-old farm girl Dorothy Gale, Judy Garland, who lives on a Kansas farm with her Aunt Em and Uncle Henry, but dreams of a better place somewhere over the rainbow. After being struck unconscious during a tornado by a window which has come loose from its frame, Dorothy dreams that she, her dog Toto and the farmhouse are transported to the magical land of Oz. There, the Good Witch of the North, Glinda, Billy Burke, advises Dorothy to follow the yellow brick road to the Emerald City and meet the Wizard of Oz, who can return her to Kansas. During her journey, she meets a scarecrow, Ray Bulger, a tin man, Jack Haley, and a cowardly lion, Bert Lahr, who join her, hoping to receive what they lack themselves, a brain, a heart and courage, respectively. All of this is done while also trying to avoid the Wicked Witch of the West, Margaret Hamilton, and her attempt to get her sister's ruby slippers from Dorothy, who received them from Glinda. The said above, the entire story of The Wizard of Oz is an allegorical tale of the soul's path to illumination, the yellow brick road. In Buddhism, an important part of theosophical teachings, the same concept is referred to as the Golden Path. The story starts with Dorothy Gale living in Kansas, which symbolizes the material world, the physical plane where each one of us starts our spiritual journey. Dorothy feels an urge to go over the rainbow, to reach the ethereal realm and follow the path to illumination. She has basically passed the nadir by demonstrating the urge to seek a higher truth. Dorothy is then brought to Oz by a giant cyclone spiraling upward, representing the cycles of karma, the cycle of errors and lessons learned. It also represents the theosophical belief in reincarnation, the round of physical births and deaths of a soul until it is fit to become divine. It is also interesting to note that the yellow brick road of Oz begins as an outwardly expanding spiral. In occult symbolism, this spiral represents the evolving self, the soul ascending from matter into the spirit world. Spiral, the path of a point, generally plane, which moves round an axis while continually approaching it or receding from it, also often used for a helix, which is generated by compounding a circular motion with one in a straight line. The spiral form is an apt illustration of the course of evolution, which brings motion round towards the same point, yet without repetition. The serpent, and the figures 8 and, denoting the Ogdoad and infinity, stand for spiral cyclic motion. The course of Fohat in space is spiral, and spirit descends into matter in spiral courses. Repeating the process by which a helix is derived form a circle produces a vortex. The complicated spirals of cosmic evolution bring the motion back to the point from which it started at the birth of a great cosmic age. The Encyclopedic Theosophical Glossary. Before undertaking her journey, Dorothy is given the silver shoes, which represent the silver cord of Mistray schools. Dorothy was wearing ruby slippers in the movie due to a last-minute change by the director, who thought that the color ruby looked better against the yellow brick road. In occult schools, the silver cord is considered to be the link between our material and spiritual selves. In Theosophy, one's physical body and one's astral body are connected through a silver cord, a mythical link inspired by a passage in the Bible that speaks of a return from a spiritual quest. Or ever the silver cord be loosed, says the book of Ecclesiastes, then shall the dust return to the earth as it was and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. In Frank Baum's own writing, the silver cord of astral travel would inspire the silver shoes that bestow special powers upon the one who wears them. Evan I. Schwartz, Finding Oz, How L. Frank Baum Discovered the Great American Story. During her journey along the yellow brick road, Dorothy encounters Scarecrow, Tin Woodman and Cowardly Lion, who are respectively searching for a brain, a heart and courage. Those odd characters embody the qualities needed by the initiates in order to complete their quest for illumination. Baum was probably inspired by these words from Miss Blavatsky: "There is no danger that dauntless courage cannot conquer, there is not trial that a spotless purity cannot pass through, there is no difficulty a strong intellect cannot surmount." H. P. Blavatsky. After surmounting many obstacles, the party finally reaches Emerald City in order to meet the wizard. Surrounded by artifices and special effects, the wizard comes across as cruel, rude and unwise. The wizard is in fact a stand-in for the personal god of the Christians and the Jews, the oppressive figure used by conventional religions to keep the masses in spiritual darkness, Jehovah or Yahweh. It is later discovered that the wizard is a humbug, a charlatan, who scares people into worshipping his wizard. He surely could not help the characters complete their quest. If you read literature of mystery schools, this point of view towards Christianity is constantly expressed. After all is said and done, the brains, the heart and the courage needed to complete Dorothy, Scarecrow, Tin Man and Lion's quests were found within each one of them. Mystery schools have always taught their students that one must rely on oneself to obtain salvation. Throughout the story, Dorothy's dog Toto represents her inner voice, her intuition. Here's a description of Toto taken from the Theosophical Society's website. Toto represents the inner, intuitive, instinctual, most animal-like part of us. Throughout the movie, Dorothy has conversations with Toto, or her inner intuitive self. The lesson here is to listen to the Toto within. In this movie, Toto was never wrong. When he barks at the Scarecrow, Dorothy tries to ignore him. "Don't be silly, Toto." Scarecrows don't talk. But scarecrows do talk in Oz. Toto also barks at the little man behind the curtain. It is he who realizes the wizard is a fraud. At the Gale farm and again at the castle, the witch tries to put Toto into a basket. What a shadow will try to block or contain the intuitive. In both cases, Toto jumps out of the basket and escapes. Our intuitive voice can be ignored, but not contained. In the last scene, Toto chases after a cat, causing Dorothy to chase after him and hence miss her balloon ride. This is what leads to Dorothy's ultimate transformation, to the discovery of her inner powers. The balloon ride is representative of traditional religion, with a skinny-legged wizard promising a trip to the divine. Toto was right to force Dorothy out of the balloon, otherwise she might never have found her magic. This is a call for us to listen to our intuition, our gut feelings, those momentary bits of imagination that appear seemingly out of nowhere. As stated above, the fake wizard invites Dorothy into his balloon to go back to Kansas, her final destination. She, however, follows Toto, her intuition, and gets out of the balloon, which represents the empty promises of organized religions. This leads to her ultimate revelation and, with the help of the Good Witch of the North, her divine guide, she finally understands, everything she ever wanted could be found in her own backyard. In order to obtain illumination, Dorothy had to vanquish the wicked witches of the East and the West, who were forming an evil horizontal axis, the material world. She was wise in listening to the advice of the good witches of the North and South, the vertical axis, the spiritual dimension. The Good Witch of the North, representing Dorothy's divine spark. At the end of the story, Dorothy wakes up in Kansas. She has successfully combined her physical and spiritual life. She is now comfortable being herself again and, despite her family not really believing the details of her quest, the ignorant profane, she can finally say there is no place like home. Almost all documentation relating to the MKUltra project and mind control mention the importance of the Wizard of Oz. In the 1940s, the story was reportedly chosen by members of the U.S. intelligence community to provide a thematic foundation for their trauma-based mind control program. The movie was edited and given a different meaning in order to use it as a tool to reinforce the programming on the victims. Here are some examples taken from Fritz Springmeier's Total Mind Control Slave. The close relationship between Dorothy and her dog is a very subtle connection between the satanic cult's use of animals, familiars. A monarch slave child will be allowed to bond with a pet. The child will want to bond with a pet anyway because people are terrifying to it by this point. Then the pet is killed to traumatize the child. Monarch slaves are taught to follow the yellow brick road. No matter what fearful things lie ahead, the monarch slave must follow the yellow brick road which is set out before them by their master. The rainbow with its 7 colors has long had the occult significance of being a great spiritual, hypnotic device. Dorothy is looking for a place where there is no trouble, which is a place over the rainbow. To escape pain, alters go over the rainbow. This is aka an Alice in Wonderland programming, as going through the looking glass somewhere over the rainbow is probably the most dissociative song ever written and is often played in movies during violent or traumatizing events. See the movie Face Off. The strange effect produced, where the violence doesn't seem real anymore, is exactly how dissociation works on mind control victims. We may also speculate that the scene where Dorothy falls asleep in a poppy field is a reference to the use of heroin to relax and manipulate the victims of mind control. Also consider the snow falling from the sky that awakens Dorothy from her slumber. Could this be a reference to cocaine? In conclusion, allegorical stories transmitting spiritual truths have existed since man's beginnings. These simple yet extremely profound stories have been found in all civilizations: Celtic, Indian, Persian, Aztec, Greek, Egyptian and others. Consciously or not, Frank Baum created a classical allegory which, in the same vein as Homer's Odyssey, entertains the masses and also contains mystical messages that can be understood by the awakened. The Wizard of Oz's great success confirms America's, and the Western world's, real spiritual dogma. Written during the 1890s, when most Americans were conservative Christians, Baum's story anticipated the population's progressive abandonment of traditional religions and the embrace of a new form of spirituality. Today's New Age movements are gaining many adepts and, even if most of them are total shams, they all claim to be inspired by theosophy. Could such tales have contributed to the spectacular decline of Christianity in the past decades while other movements continue to gain momentum?